All right, so up next here, we have Renderman with the Hacking the Internet of Dongs. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but I'll let him introduce himself here.
All right. So yes, I am Renderman, and I do apologize for missing my time slot. When you're the Pope of the Church of Wi-Fi, and you get the crack attack thing going on, it makes your life really interesting. So yes, renderlab.net is the main site. Unfortunately, I suck at HTML and remembering to update it, so there's a lot of historical stuff there, nothing great. Twitter, as I hacked what, penetration tester by day. My employer has basically said, for the love of God, do not say who you work for during your talk. Previously, I've done this stuff in air traffic control systems, wireless networks, zombie attacks, like all sorts of stuff. Pope of the Church of Wi-Fi and the Church of Crypto, and now also the Dawn of Dongs was the title I was bestowed. This is Murdoch. He is the result of a 10-year joke that Hackfest out in Quebec City finally got. I would always ask for the same three things whenever I went to a conference, on that line that says, do you need anything else to do your talk? And it's a case of imported beer, half a dozen emu eggs, and a blue monkey. Well, they brought me the beer, the eggs were too expensive, and they brought me a blue monkey. Now a travel companion, he's on Twitter, he gets into all sorts of shenanigans. Suggest you follow him. Frequently unwilling Church of Wi-Fi paratrooper and gravity test subject. I've actually had to calculate the terminal velocity of a spherical monkey in a vacuum. And he's now the chief dong wrangler. This is a serious talk. This is one of those topics that can go off the rails very quickly, very easily. Yes, some of it is genuinely funny, but yeah, we're all adults here. Let's act like it. I don't intend to offend. If I do tell me. I try to respect everybody, but you can't please all the people all the time. If I do, I try to adjust. Let me know. Anytime there's any double entendres, innuendo, or anything, it's completely unintentional. There is not a joke I haven't heard by now. It goes over my head. I don't think about it anymore. So I will do my best to keep this safe for work, PG-13. I don't think we have to worry about children in the audience, thank goodness. But if you find anything, really truly humorous in this talk, it's because it's related to sex. You're just a terrible human being then. Is Kevin 2600 here? He was. He buggered off. Well, I owe him a beer. So somebody tell him that. I also want to give him credit on a report. I'll get into it, but one of these devices in my bag doesn't have an on-off switch. It's always beaconing. He found it, connected to it, and rewrote the name on it, which was something that I was already planning on disclosing to the vendor. But he beat me to it, left me this little message, and I'm like, kudos, I like it. Made me very happy. So why am I studying these? Basically, intimate gadgets are now becoming connected, like everything else in our lives. And intimate gadgets is basically anything that your genitals goes in your genitals or around genitals. That's what I'm worried about, and it connects to the internet in some way. These devices and users deserve privacy and security like we expect out of all products. These especially more than most, because you got to think, there's some interesting privacy and security implications, particularly given society's weirdness about sex. This was a branch of IoT that no one had really studied because no companies wanted to be associated with adult products, and there's this weird stigma. I wanted a new project. I wanted to do something IoT. Well, baby monitors, fridges, webcams, all that stuff's already taken, but nobody wanted to touch this stuff. I don't know why. I have no dignity, and it was in a price range. It's not like I'm trying to buy a refrigerator or a car, so it was affordable, and so I went with that. Why do I call it the Internet of Dongs? Well, it's a particular branch of IoT, so you've got Internet of Things, Internet of Dongs. It's just fun to say. Domain names, there's a .gs top-level domain, which I believe is South Sandwich Islands. So internetofdawn.gs is the website. It's also a unit of currency in Vietnam. So if you're actually trying to do any safe for work content, dong will get through. oh, I'm just looking at Vietnamese currencies. But really, sex drives the internet. Why not secure it? The name got your butts in these seats, didn't it? So how do we start? With a really stupid rom-com movie. Have we got audio on the? Nope. I don't know what's going to go full screen, but anyways. Basically, the situation is Katherine Heigl's character is wearing a pair of vibrating panties, given her by Gerard Butler's character. She doesn't have a chance to take them off before she gets hauled out to a business dinner. So she's wearing them right now. She put down her purse, and the remote rolled out. And this kid picks it up. And of course, he's like, oh, what does this do? You know, click, click, click. You know.
What are you doing? Looking for the remote. What remote? Oh. The underwear. Wait, you're wearing them now. Oh, wow. Yeah? Yeah. This ceviche. It's
All right. In the interest of time, it's about a 3-minute clip, but in the interest of time, I'm going to move on here. But why were you laughing? There's some serious questions there. The embarrassment factor, you know, maybe her boss is a real prude and, you know, she could have gotten fired because of that situation. Radio interference from the remote control, you know, could it have done all sorts of weird things? Who knows? But the big question is, did that kid just commit a sex crime? Think about it. He didn't have her permission to stimulate her. That basically fits the definition of a sexual assault in a lot of cases. We are now in a day and age of remote rape. This has serious implications. So if you're thinking that's funny, you're watching a kid effectively rape Katherine Heigl. Rape by deception is a thing in some jurisdictions. Now that I have your attention and shame. So I started the project, like I said, because I wanted something to do. It very quickly became more than just like a fun domain to put, you know, any results. Keeping track of the sheer number of vulnerabilities was problematic because CVEs don't really work because it's usually implementation problems, not fundamental problems in products. So it's, and also like I talked to the guys that do the CV, some issues on the CVEs for Red Hat, and they're like, we have no idea how to even categorize a dong. So, so created the DVEs, dong vulnerability exposures. Basically try to act as a hub for researchers to collaborate, pool information, facilitate interactions with the industry, because this industry, as you'll see, really didn't know what they were getting themselves into. Built connections with other projects. Buttplug.io is a open framework for and drivers for controlling these. Why are you laughing? But it's literally a case of I'm pointing out all the security vulnerabilities in the vendors' implementations, and here's an open source one that is secure. Like the Venn diagram is beautiful. I'm helping the vendors set up vulnerability disclosure programs, helping them to make it easy to report these vulnerabilities, helping them to bridge that gap between the researchers in InfoSec and the adult industry. So let's look at the basics of these things. The vast majority of these devices all operate about the same. They're either Bluetooth or BLE devices. There's a few Wi-Fi and other protocols. Basically, they pair to a smartphone or smart device, and that's how they're basically bridged to the internet. So the remote control functions are on your phone to control them over Bluetooth low energy. But there are some that are desktop applications as well. Usually they'll use open protocols, XMPP, Jabber, Twilio for controlling these things, as well as a lot of them have text, video, and audio chat capabilities as well. So you've got Skype basically on your phone with remote control of a vibrator. Why does it keep cutting off the bottom? What's going on there? Not sure. I think it's the resolution thing. Okay, so if I go, was it F7? Nope. Yay! There we go. So, really basic diagram. It's basically phone to phone or through vendor servers to the devices over Bluetooth LE. You know, this shouldn't really confuse the crap out of anybody. So our current status is 29 major vulnerabilities found and reported, 21 confirmed fixed. They could be a lot more. I've just been extraordinarily busy, so I haven't been able to follow up. Been able to get 4 complete or partial user databases out of these vendors, 1 entire marketing mail list account, 2 remote account hijacks for everything, 1 set of GPS coordinates for all users, fine GPS coordinates, I can tell which room of the house you're fapping in, 8 vendors fully on board with, you know, it's amazing to talk to them. You see the light bulb go off over their head and they're like, oh, we're now a software company. Yeah. And that carries a great deal of responsibility and certain things you have to do. They get it now. They're on board. I'm helping them, you know, giving them advice on how to improve their situation. 4 have reached what I consider a trusted level where they've got a nascent, you know, at least a basic security program in place, processes, and their attitude is one of, yeah, we're going to invest heavily in this. 4 companies not destroyed because we responsibly disclosed it to them and they fixed it rather than going to say Wired or something like that. As you'll see, some of these vulnerabilities are big enough that, yeah, I could have destroyed these companies, but I have no desire to. You know, it's some of these companies are literal mom and pop shops. I mean, you know, all their manufacturing and everything's done over in China, like everything else. But it's like there's a half dozen employees. I don't want to put them out of business. 26 test devices. I was awarded a $2,000 butt plug. I have a corporate sponsor and a very confused mother. We were sponsored by Pornhub. Amazingly. I mean, I'm sure you're all familiar here. Yeah. Devices are expensive. I mean, these things are a couple $100 a pop. I don't have a ton of cash. I was given by a store in Edmonton, the Traveling Tickle Trunk, a bunch of, they do like the in-home parties, you know, it's like a Tupperware party, but a different kind of Rubbermaid. And they had some, you know, they've been passed around, or like a broken power connector or something like that. Something that we had the electronics, which is what we were interested in. So what if we had to cut them open and, you know, resolder something? That bootstrapped the project, but to get the rest of these, needed some money. Drunk email to Pornhub, paid off. They gave me a big pile of cash to basically purchase everything, you know, one of everything that I had found that was available on the market. I still owe them articles for their health and wellness blog about this, which was one of the conditions of this. I would have done it anyways, regardless. But again, try explaining this to your mother why you're getting a bank transfer from Pornhub and you kept your clothes on. This is a very weird place to research. The discussions that I've had with other researchers have been like incredibly academic and amazingly insightful. But then you take a step back and you're like, did we just spend 2 hours talking about fingerprinting blowjobs as biometrics? Yes, we did. I'm very open-minded, non-judgmental, sex positive. Even I'm like, okay, I didn't need to know that, but the vulnerabilities that I found are the more shocking part of this. First off, nobody knows how to do SSL. Like, does anybody anywhere ever know how to do SSL, it seems? These guys seem to be particularly poor. Most of the apps, if they use SSL, will do stupid things like allow all host name verifier, which if you know anything about Android programming, basically says turn off all verifications of the SSL cert. I can give you anything and you'll accept it. Like, It's just perfect for man in the middle kind of thing. So it's that false sense of security. Makes man in the middle way too easy. Many use self-side inserts, no pinning, no CA checks. Like it's just really, really basic. Really poor website implementations as well. I've seen some early on that had SSL version 2 still enabled. It was bad. How many shared networks are these kind of devices used on? I mean, think about it. If you're, a worker that's traveling and you're trying to stay intimate with your partner, stay connected, you have these things, you're on the hotel network. How many of you know if they've got client separation turned off on, the hotel if you're staying at one here? I know that I spend a great deal of time seeing what other people are up to on the networks at hotels. I got to think that the NSA has a few, archives of some very interesting data as well. So again, privacy and security, sex-related matters to people. So SSL is like a first level thing you should be doing. On user enumeration bugs, multiple vendors had these kind of issues. Usually poor coding, it works, but not well. I mean, it's that unauthenticated queries, no rate limiting, no tokens. You'll hear me say it a few times, but it's like the internet 15 years ago. It's the bad old days where, yes, anybody can spin up a website. Doesn't mean that they know what they're doing. So in a lot of these, you can query against a list of known email addresses and say, hey, is there an account here? And let's say, sometimes even the account names, if you're able to enumerate those, have email addresses in them. So the first vulnerabilities I found and disclosed was for Lovents. Basically, their query API's query said, hey, does this email account have does this email address have an account? And it returns true or false. That's it. No tokens, no authentication, no nothing. And barely any rate limiting. So yeah, it was stupid easy to just script this to say, hey, let's find out. So I dumped my personal address book, about 275 addresses, and I just scripted it, iterate through all these, tell me what the response was. I have some friends with surprising personal activities. Again, I don't judge, but it was still a surprise, and it was a fact that they had not chosen to share with me that I now knew, which, they didn't share it with me for some reason. And yeah, this is why it's a problem. One friend, it surprised the hell out of me, so I had to email him and ask him, okay, why do you have an account here? He's like, through his employer, he's actually doing BLE device research and had a couple of these toys as test devices and didn't know I was doing this. So the fact that I pointed out to him that, hey, I found out you had these because you had an account, again, just shows that I would never have suspected. Then I took it to an absurd level and took the Ashley Madison dump, extracted all the gc.ca and .gov addresses I could find, basically about 10,000 email addresses. I just wanted to see, can I just fire off 10,000 queries and do this? There were some true returns, but these people have suffered enough. I'm not, going to out anybody, but it was just, that's interesting. You got to think that, politics being dirty business, that somebody would find those facts interesting. And I mean, I also have to question any politician that would use a, government work email to sign up for these things. And the fact that there was government stuff in the Ashley Madison database was wow, whatever. But you could start data mining this like crazy, looking for celebrities, looking for God knows what. And it could get really interesting. Another one that was really interesting was Oh My Bod. The app had a search function. It was a little more social than others, so you could search for other users to connect to and invite them to remote control your device. It allowed partial username searches in the GUI. So you had to have at least 3 letters before it would search. So you couldn't do any wildcards or anything. So you had to have at least part of the name. Well, that was being executed in the UI. You know, they were only they weren't doing it on the back end. So if you actually talk to the API directly, you could do single character queries. Basically did queries for A through Z, 0 through 9, 36 queries that had all the public profiles. Okay, it was all public stuff, great. So what? I could have just done this all manually, you know, scripted it, got what I needed. The profile information, when you looked at it raw, contained username, bcrypt hashed email, which I was surprised at, gender, a privacy bit, the URL for the profile photo, you know, a field they called token and some other stuff. I made the mistake of taking all those photo URLs and doing a big wget and getting 2.5 gigs of profile photos. Anybody want like 2 gigs worth of penis photos? Like, it was, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. Like I said, it was public data harvested en masse, but then along came Pixel Blur. The privacy bit that I mentioned in the account had noted whether or not you're required to have the full name in the search field in order to have it show and be allowed to then, you know, issue an invitation. Pixels found that sending a set of double quotes would act as a wildcard. A single query, you send this thing off, and you're like, oh, that's taking a while. I wonder if something crashed. No, it's a 32 meg JSON file it's returning. The entire goddamn database, everything, public and private, back all the way to when they started development. You know, so there was like some of the profile photos were like test images of like the guy's lunch. They even had it snapped a picture of the business card on the. There was a business card on the desk for the company, and I was able to find out who had been the initial developers of the thing. So it's like the information disclosure there was even more extensive. But Pixel also found that the database, every one of those records that was returned had all the information you needed in it to change any detail in those profiles, including the password. That's full hijack of 50,000 devices if you wanted it. Like I said, this is enough to destroy somebody. And this has to be one of the biggest and best or worst, depending on which side of things you're on, we found so far. So, stand up. That's Pixel. Met her last year. Nickerson, Daniels, Devian, and I all saw that she was awesome and took her on as a student, as a Padawan. I've been trying to mentor her. She made me really proud with this one, so I had to call her out on this, say, good job. Helped me through a bunch of things, just been a very decent human being. She's looking for a job in InfoSec, so help her. Thanks. So some apps are more social than others. Some have search features to find friends. Others have the ability to, script your own vibration patterns and share those, in like a sort of store situation. Well, this is why it's always fun to just peek under the hood and see what is actually going on in these queries and transactions. In this particular one, this is a Levents one. You see that there's, the text there, the base 64 encoded pattern name. That's the pattern. It's like the, vibe pattern, whatever. But the author name is null because they wanted to stay anonymous. So when you look at it in the store, it says, this pattern has been posted by anonymous. Except if you look, their email address is sitting in the return. Kind of self-defeating. It's not shown in the UI, but if you peek under the hood, there it is. Like you're disclosing more, and this was an app where you could use anonymous usernames. So you're now disclosing personally identifiable information now. That's scary, because obviously this person didn't want their identity associated with this. Partner disclosure. Many of these devices have apps that allow you to pair with another user and remote control over the internet. Larry Pesci at DEF CON 22 showed another product, VibeEase, that you could query for, hey, who's this person's partner? Simple query to the get partner info, user, basically saying, hey, who's the partner of your vagina? The return name is Hacks of the Matrix. But theoretically, you should only be able to do this for your own account, right? It got more interesting because you could do batch contact info was another function that allowed queries of any username that's known. So if I knew a username, I could query for who their partner was. But there was no way to easily enumerate. But you take a list of like 1,000 common usernames. Run that through and see what you get responses for. Each one of those that you get responses for will tell you who their partner is. Add that to the list now, because you now have verified real usernames. Find out who else they've partnered with. Lather, rinse, repeat. You can now basically extract the entire database by just like following social networks and like who's connected to who. I really would love to I still have the data. I'd love to do like a proper like social network graph and just plot this out. But once you had all those usernames, you could go back to this one and pull a whole bunch of very specific information about their account. So yeah, it's one of those, you're iterating through things. It's not that it's just giving you the whole database, but you're able to leverage that small bit of access in that I can query an account that's not my own and leverage that to the whole database. Stopped at about 2,500 users, could have done more, but yeah, you could literally like who's vibing who thing. This was another vendor. Still unverified if they fixed it, but in this particular case, they wanted to find out how far away two users were. And there's a lot of ways to do that. They chose the method of, let's send the fine GPS coordinates to the other user and let them do the calculation locally. And that's for every user as you're searching through everyone who's online. The return for their account has their GPS coordinates in it. That's bad. That's scary. Because like I said, I can tell where exactly in the house you are. And the whole point of this thing was a certain level of anonymity. You kind of lose it at that point. Most recent vulnerability, the Lilo Picobong. The Remoji app had their MailChimp API key embedded in it, like full admin access. Normally, you're supposed to just do a GET request to a specific URL for MailChimp to sign someone up for the marketing mail list. You just do a GET request with the person's email, and it signs them up. They were manually using the API key to add to the mail list. It worked, but very much not in the way that the API documentation said to do it. It took 3 months of banging on doors, Twitter, emails, filling out their web forms to try to get someone to actually respond and say, hey, I have a vulnerability to disclose. You probably want to talk to me. I would never get responses. Or I get the automated, oh yes, thank you for your contribution. It showed exactly why you need a vulnerability disclosure program, because I went kind of above and beyond in terms of trying to get a hold of them. I actually went through their mail lists, extracted all the company email, domain emails out of that, and then used that as a carpet bomb to just try to get somebody to respond. The conversation with them was quite hilarious because they accidentally CC'd me on an email that said, oh yeah, he's up for a Skype call, and we'll have that next week, and then we'll find out what his real motivation is. And it's like, I get it. It's a little weird to have some researcher come out and say, hey, I found vulnerability in your vibrator. I get it. But it was just sad that somebody doing something altruistically is looked at as suspicious. So I called them out on that. They were kind of embarrassed, but they very quickly became believers because it's like, here's the evidence, here's your API key, here's a link to how to do it properly in the MailChimp API, like everything you need it right there. Talk to them and it's like, one of my rules is I never ask for anything. You know, no remuneration, no payments, no products, no nothing. I never ask. If they offer, that's a different matter. I'm not stupid, you know. In this case, they sent me a bunch of the Picobong devices that I didn't have for more testing, but they also included a $2,000 butt plug. It's one of those, I'm like, I pull it out of the shipment, and I'm like, I have no idea what I'm gonna do with this thing. I have no interest in like the manufacturer's recommended, you know, usage or anything. It comes with matching cufflinks, but like, okay, this thing's big, heavy, shiny. Now it's bling. So this is just a small number. I mean, like I said, there's 29 major vulnerabilities. And this is just what I've used to get a foot in the door to talk to these companies. This is the stuff that just fell apart in my hands and had something. You know, it's like, okay, you guys have a problem. You need some education here. Because sex and privacy concerns are all over IoT stuff. Not a week goes by you don't hear about some horror story. You know, some kid's toy. There was a recent thing about kids' smartwatches. Was there something about a Tickle Me Elmo thing in the last couple of weeks? Again, that's a whole like tangent on this research that could go all sorts of bad. But this was yet another industry that had previously made just manually operated devices that decided, hey, let's get this chipset, this development chipset from Nordic or TI, put it in, you know, it's a couple of I/O pins, hook it to the motors, there's an app, done. It works. Well, there's more to it than that. There's implications that they never considered because they've never had to deal with this before. It's quite interesting to talk to them. They just don't know what they don't know. So I've been doing all this research, trying to make things better. Yes, it means I have a bag full of sex toys, and a lot of people always assume that, yeah, this guy knows how to party, but this is actually for science, unused. I keep very close accounting of all the money I've spent, the Pornhub money. And I do take this seriously because the potential for harm and damage to reputations and privacy is humongous. Like I said, to me, this is science. And as Adam Savage says, remember, kids, the only difference between science and screwing around is science and is writing it down. And that takes on a whole new meaning here. But doing the research and finding vulnerabilities is only part of this. Very quickly, I realized, like I said, they don't know what they're doing. There's no one around. They don't have people like us around to say, do you think that's a good idea? They don't know what they don't know. They are genuine and honestly naive. Talking with them, like the number of times I've heard, oh yeah, we take the privacy and security of our customers seriously. I'm like, do you actually know what it takes to do that? No. They're you know, they'll farm out the app development to a company. One of them, it seemed like the most complex thing they'd ever made was like some travel, you know, points of interest sites. You know, nothing with authentication, nothing with SSL. The app worked, but when they owner of the company asked, "Hey, so is it secure?" "Yep, we use SSL." Yeah, you forgot to mention the whole really, really poorly self-signed, you know, not even checking the CA certs. Like, just because you're using SSL doesn't mean you're secure. And that's the problem, is they didn't know how to judge. They didn't have a criteria to compare against. Like I said, we're at where the tech industry was 15 years ago. It's any idiot can take one of these things that's offline, put a chipset in it, connect it, and have a cloud-connected device. Does it mean you should? Do you know the implications of that? Like I said, these were effectively hardware manufacturers that are now software vendors. They don't realize that. I can't do all the work and all the research, obviously. I don't work for free. I am way too damn busy lately. But I can at least try and guide them. You know, advice is cheap and easy. Yeah, sometimes it's going to end up costing money, but give it to somebody else with more time. They needed more than bug reports. They needed guidance and hand-holding. So create a simple framework and templates for them to do things for reporting vulnerabilities, how to handle them. Because if people want to give you free work and do free security audits for you, let them. Free labor. Why would you not want them to reach out to you and disclose this stuff so you can fix it? If you make it difficult, like the Lilo one, I was basically on Twitter saying, if you guys don't get a hold of me in a week, I'm going to have to drop O'Day here. What did somebody put it? It was Odong. That's the thing, is Twitter is very good for coming up with like really silly terms for things. So one of them is, have a security at email address. Really simple. Have it not go to like the general delivery email or to a secretary. Have it go to, someone technical or someone who recognizes that an email to that address should probably have a different set of attention. Set up a security page with the security at contact info, but also have things like, what's the disclosure process? And I basically just scraped a bunch of stuff from like HackerOne and other like bug bounty sites and says, here's the 90 days, we'll keep you in communication, we'll respond in 48 hours, just those sort of things. It's a single web page, it's not hard. It also gives the companies the ability to set scope and say, yeah, don't go after a credit card processor, but here's stuff that is ours and we control. Have at it, but don't do like DDoS. Don't try to social engineer our people. Stuff like that. It gives them some legal covering too. I mean, this is all stuff that for the rest of us is dead simple, but to them they're like, oh wow. I mean, one of them is like absolutely enamored and thinks I was like sent by God or something. It's creepy. But having like an internal triage process. What happens when you get a report? Do you have something, even just a little one-page thing documenting? It's like, okay, Bob talks to Alice and gets to verify that there is a vulnerability, who talks to then Steve to fix it and verify that it gets pushed up right away and tell the researcher. Done. Eventually, I'd like to see them actually get up to like paid bug bounties, because if they actually were doing that, I would be a very rich man by now. But at this point, they didn't even know they had to take vulnerability submissions. So bug bounties are a little ways off. Many vendors have set this up. And so, I don't know if that shows up well. So this is the Vibes security page. And at the bottom, they have a acknowledgement section. So me and QDOT, they're the first two ones listed. We're both working together on this project. He runs the buttplug.io stuff. The rest of those people, I had nothing to do with. But yet they submitted vulnerabilities to Vibes and made the product better because there was a vulnerability disclosure program that made it easy to do so. It works. Like, that makes me so incredibly happy. There's a larger effort I'm trying that, unfortunately, I need to like take a week off of work just to get things done. But several vendors have approached me to start some sort of like industry group where they all get together and adopt a security standard, voluntarily, and basically keep each other honest. They have to post transparency reports saying, or checklists that say, here's how we achieve this result, or that, even simple things like, we're always going to make sure that our sites and API endpoints get SSL ranking of A on SSL labs. Simple stuff like that. Statements like, we do not store email addresses with your user profile. Those are in a completely separate marketing database. Just making them at least take the moment, look, verify, and do so. I think it would be work really well, because then you let market forces decide. If you've got 8 of the biggest names together saying, hey, we care about security, here's how we care about security. If you're on the outside of that group, you're going to be, if you're a customer and you're looking to see whose product you're interested in, they're like, yes, we know that there could be vulnerabilities, here's how to disclose them, here's what we're doing to protect you, active, versus super sketchy Chinese vendor that you don't even know who actually made the thing. Let the market decide, but also make it so that the trade group's open and bring these other guys in too. Again, they keep each other honest. I'd like to get it to the point where they're doing like third-party compliance audits, like have someone come in and verify that they are actually doing what they say they're doing. Simple stuff. I don't necessarily want to have like a seal of approval that you see in a box, my face that says it's secure. That's the last thing you want to see on a box with vibrators, But it's something that you can see having like a trade association or something like that site that says, these are our members, here's what we do, here's how we do it. That having a logo on their site that says they're a member of this and adhere to a certain level of, it's like those really annoying PSAs on TV. It's like the broadcaster's code of conduct kind of thing. Why not? It's a good idea. But there are some things that are not helping me lately. So Pentest Partners has done a couple of reports of, they've done some hacks on some various vibrators. One I don't have listed here is the CME-I. This thing is Wi-Fi based and has an endoscopic camera in the end. Again, I don't judge. If you read their article objectively, the reverse engineering they did was actually very, very interesting. What is in here is an RA-Link system on a chip system that is a IP camera from a manufacturer of drones. Like flying drones. They basically took that, repackaged it into a vibrator. But they left a bunch of the old code in there and everything like that. They were like, I could get root on a vibrator. That's awesome. Because they left a bunch of the other code in there and there's a BusyBox running and just enough functionality, I can actually flip this thing into client mode, have it join a network, and host content on it. So I literally have internet on a dong. But the problem was a lot of these articles, and even if they're done professionally, the juvenile side ends up coming out. They're like, oh my God, sex. Like, well, no, it was a very interesting reverse engineering exercise, but all the risks you mentioned don't apply if you use the device normally. This thing acts as a Wi-Fi access point that your phone connects to. It doesn't connect out. It never goes online. Okay, so you can war drive and find these things in public. Yeah, let's check wiggle.net, online repository of God knows how many million now of publicly detected access points. And for the default SSID on these, there are 2. Just outside of a 4-story sex shop in downtown Tokyo. That's it. Like, your risk is overblown. But of course, when media gets a hold of that, they don't notice these things. Makes my life difficult because suddenly now vendors that are already a little bit sketchy about dealing with researchers and stuff like that are like, oh great, are you going to embarrass the living crap out of us now? Like, you notice I don't do like huge press releases every time I find a vulnerability. It's, yeah, we document, I've got the DVE reports as to the kinds of things we're finding and fixing, but I'm not making a big deal out of it. It's because I want them fixed, Just in the last week, there was a researcher that found that, oh my God, takes the Levant's Hush here, this butt plug, and then Bluetooth LE, and yeah, you can use a tool like BLEH, BLEAH, to enumerate the capabilities of it and send commands to it. So you could do that with like Fitbits and like God knows how many other devices. But of course the media blows up because, oh my God, sex. They're thinking it's like, oh my God, somebody can hack your vibrator remotely. And like, okay, Bluetooth at best, what, 6 feet optimally? 30 feet if you really want to go by manufacturer specifications. If this is being worn out in public, it's surrounded by a big bag of meat. And humans are made of water, which is really good at absorbing RF. So your range is significantly reduced. So what are the chances of someone actually finding in a public space and having a good enough signal to then attack this and cause it to go off? Nobody's done empirical testing. Strangely enough, I can't find a lot of volunteers. I think I might have to do some water balloons or something. But it's one of those making a mountain of a molehill. That, okay, yes, there was somebody on Twitter that said they found that their next door neighbor had a sex toy. Well, if you're in a duplex or an apartment where the bedrooms share a common wall, okay, yeah, you're not that far away. But if you were really interested in what they're doing in the bedroom, you just put your ear up to the wall. Doing one, out in public, like, it's PR stuff. It gets the attention. Versus 50,000 user database that you can hijack the entire thing. Which do you think is better spending your time on researching? I'm not saying that there isn't some issues with these, but the interesting part is I was already working on this problem because one of them was we just don't know how often these things are out there. Nobody's got data. The Pentest Partners report there says, oh yeah, I was out in the middle of Berlin and with my phone, a Bluetooth scanner, and found one in public. I'm like, okay, yeah. But out of how many thousands of Apple Watches and Fitbits and God knows how many other things, what is the ratio? We don't know. So I basically started an idea where I cataloged all the device names that I could possibly find, and we now have a plugin for Kismet that highlights any of those that are found. So we now know exactly all the device names for any of these IoT devices. It will highlight. 61 names, 52 devices. It's on GitHub. Pardon my really bad regex that it's in it, but it's a first step. But this was the first step of something larger that I wanted to get real world data for, which I've tentatively named the IoT butt sniffer. Did I pull it out here? Oh, I'm not sure where I put it. Basically, Raspberry Pi distro, you plug it in a Bluetooth adapter, it sits there and it just sniffs for Bluetooth devices. I was hoping to have an LCD screen up to show you something, but just wanting to get some statistics of total Bluetooth devices versus IoT devices. Like just a really simple thing you could wear, like, I want to walk around like West Edmonton Mall, someplace like that. Something that people could set up outside of, crowded areas and just let's see. It's anonymous because you're not necessarily tying it to a specific user who's wearing it. It's just that somebody in this area had one at one point. Hope to have an early beta to show, but I suck. But the interesting part is because of this other research and the fact that they're ignoring that so many other Bluetooth devices could be hacked. Unfortunately, I missed Kevin 2600's talk earlier, but I'm sure that anybody that saw it was like, yeah, there's a lot out there that can be hacked. Yes, we can weaponize this concept. What I want to do is, I've already started, is because I have all these device names, and the buttplug.io project has documented all the protocols for controlling these devices. So I know the UUID, the name of the device, the UUIDs that I need to talk to, and what to send to them. Why not just start scripting that? You get within range and you get a surprise. But you could do that with anything, any BLE device. Just because it's sex related, people look at it weird and differently, and that bothers me. But at the same time, are manufacturers letting the public know, hey, there's risks to wearing this stuff out in public. Now, if that's your thing and you're aware of the vulnerability, the potential for someone else to potentially control it, and you're fine with that, that's fine. But it's at least they have the informed, they're informed at that point. It's when they aren't informed and somebody gets surprised that's when, trauma can occur. Because, like I said, it is remote rape in a way. And if you found out that someone was controlling your vibrator that wasn't the person that you thought it was, the sense of horror and violation is no more diminished than versus a physical attack. So it's serious stuff. So if you want to help, I'm always looking for more devs and researchers. I've already mentioned to a few students here, this stuff falls apart in your hands. Like, it's pretty bad. I've got a list of, I have to look again, I think it's like 35 or 40 different apps. I've only been able to get through a few of them. And even then, somebody could look at the same app I already looked at and find new stuff. So it's a really good practice ground. And there's some vaguely socially redeeming value in it. And yeah, you have an excuse to look at porn. If anybody's in like compliance or policy, I am trying to put together a more formal document of like best practices and such that I'm good at violating policy, not writing it. So I need help with the language and such. You can imagine the crap I've seen, so beer is always good. I do have a Patreon because there are some ongoing costs for hosting and that. But really, it's just a labor of love. As somebody on Twitter put it the other day, they said, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that the Internet of Dongs project is doing the Lord's work, helping vendors patch and secure their devices. And I'm like, yeah, thanks. I think the only way we're doing Lord's work is helping someone say, oh God, oh God, oh God, in the privacy and security of their own home. But is that bad? Think about it. This is literally work that helps put a smile on a person's face. So if you're interested, find me. There's my contact info. Questions? Over there.
So, in your research, I know what we were talking about was apps and APIs that are all online, they're hosted, they're easy enough to patch once properly found.
Mm-hmm.
How to patch them. But what does it look like from the physical device side of things? How many articles are actually system on the chip? And what
So he's
patching capability?
So he's asking online, web pages, APIs, stuff like that. That's easily patched, easily fixed. But what about the devices themselves? Can you patch those? A number of them have the ability to do firmware updates. Like some of them are more complex than others. Some of these are quite literally the default developer development kit. Same code and everything on it, just took I/O pins. Like they're really dead simple. Others have, it's not an internet connected one, but there's a, name escapes me, but there's one that's actually like, tries to use like artificial intelligence to figure out what you like and adapt to that. So there is ability on those to update firmware, like the Kiro stuff here can do firmware updates. So generally, if it's necessary, the capability exists. Whether or not they'll leverage it is unknown. We don't know. Any more questions? Yep.
Did you ever find anything that wasn't compromisable? Like maybe it actually did?
So, how long are we got? Yeah, a couple minutes. Okay. So, everybody here heard about the WeVibe lawsuit about 2 years ago? So, basically, WeVibe, one of the biggest names in the tele-dildonics, internet-controlled sex toys, they're out of Ottawa, actually. They were actually one of the first devices I ever checked out. Their app actually did a lot of things right. There were some problems, some issues. The communications weren't, the SSL wasn't the greatest, and some of the stuff they were sending back and forth was like, that's interesting. I actually put in a talk at DEF CON but was denied because a couple out of New Zealand put in the exact same talk. I'd spoken for like 8 years straight. They were new, so they're like, we're sick of you, so we'll give it to the newbies. I was sitting there in the front row, dead center, and I'm like, okay, they got that, yeah. Oh, they missed this, going down the list. Did a great job. But I was kind of glad that I wasn't the one doing it, because about a month later, there was a class action lawsuit filed against the company. The issue was because the username was an email address. And like most devices, yes, it has to connect through a company server at some point or another. So you had, timestamps for usage, when someone was logged in. It collected usage statistics, like what's your favorite pattern on it, that sort of stuff. The sort of stuff that we always just say, okay, whatever, in the license agreement. Do you want to allow anonymous usage data? Yes, that was all sent to the company. There was also temperature of the chipset, like an internal temperature of the chipset, which a lot of media actually thought was like body temperature, meaning medical. And it's like, no. This is like making sure that the device doesn't pull some sort of like Samsung situation with lithium-ion batteries. So yeah, they got nailed for $5 million in this class action lawsuit. The issue was, in their app, the privacy policy, the text of it was from the one from their website. It didn't explain what they were collecting in the app. It was talking about what they collect on their website. So therefore, they had not disclosed that they were collecting this personal information, because theoretically you could know when somebody's using it. You have their email address, a personal identifier, their favorite patterns. You could build a dossier on people. No evidence they were actually doing so for anything. No evidence it was compromised, abused, sold, anything like that. It was just the fact that they neglected to put the right text in there. They got sued for $5 million. Should actually find out the next day or two, because I'm actually in the put in for that. And I think in the category I'm in, you can get up to 10 grand. Not that I'm expecting it, but theirs was actually one of the most secure apps I've ever audited. And afterwards, to their credit, after the talk, they went back to drawing board, basically, re-engineered the thing, and it is like the high watermark that I tell other vendors. It's like, because they're actually doing certificate pinning properly. They're doing, you don't have to log in anymore. So they're not, if you don't collect it, you don't have to worry about it. But it's just funny that they're the ones that got sued, and yet the stuff that is just dangling there in all these other devices, yeah, like I said, a 50,000 user database, probably a lot more of a violation of private information. How much is that lawsuit? So yeah, every one of them, I've found something, 'cause like I said, in early versions of the WeVibe app, there were some things. Now, there isn't, but everything else, there's always something. Yes?
Have you traveled with that case? And what's it like?
Have I traveled with the case?
What's it like with the airport security if you have?
Oh, TSA loves me. It's a longer story, catch me outside, but ask me about when I came back from DerbyCon and Customs wanted to verify my declaration and go through all of my bags.
Nice.
So, if you want to have fun, I was go through TSA or CATSA with a big bag of sex toys. Because inevitably they look at it and there's a bunch of electronics. Okay, pull it aside. Oh, can we search your bag? Yes, you may. Can I take pictures? They don't want you to. But they look at the screen, okay, open up. Okay. Yeah. I believe there was one female CATS agent at the Edmonton airport that's opened up and said, "Yep, this is good. This is all good." And it's one of those. They're nicely packed and everything like that, because I don't want to end up in a Fight Club situation. Everybody remember the line from Fight Club? We always have to use in case of a dildo, we always have to use the indefinite article a dildo, never your dildo. I mean, they're used to these sort of things in baggage. They're used to being discreet. You got to think they've seen everything, but maybe not in bulk. So, I still want to like go through and label them. It's like Monday, Tuesday, Tuesday night with just to screw with people. Any others? I can't see all the any hands. Nobody? Really? Okay. Yep.
Along the same lines that I was thinking about, you said you've got quite a bill for these devices, and you track all these costs.
Yep.
So what happens come tax time?
So basically, Pornhub gave me a pile of money. I've been keeping track of it just because it was gifted money. It's someone else's money. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't any accusations that I was, embezzling or something like that. No, I don't keep it in a separate account. It's kind of pointless. I mean, I could cash it out and throw it on the mattress or whatever, but it wasn't enough that it's going to make a huge dent in taxes, so not a big deal. Like I said, most of these are a couple $100 a pop, so it's within the realm of the average person. It's just if I can use corporate money for it and get free Pornhub stickers all the time, like why not? But what? Is this thing still working? Okay. So, quick little demonstration. In the Pearl here, there are sensors, that haptic sensors, and it's going over Bluetooth through my phone to the Onyx, which is, this is the Audi, this is the Innie, or vice versa, depending on, if you're talking about the owner or the toy. So, I don't know if you can hear it. It's easier if I actually pull the sleeve out. I don't know if you can see, but as you apply pressure, it corresponds on this side. So what you do over here affects over there. Anybody familiar with the term feedback loop? Oh, come on. Kung Fu grip. But I mean, this is the next generation. This is what we've always wanted. It's like, where's my flying car? Where's my jetpack? Where's my sex robot? Well, there's a bunch of articles I've seen lately that say sex robots are next year, and they're like 18 grand a pop, but I still want to test them because, it's people are going to buy these. Well, think about it. If somebody hacks that thing and has, say, the jaw clamped down with 500 pounds of pressure at a very inopportune time, that'd make your day suck. Or not suck, or semantics. But I don't know. I find this stuff fascinating. I'm weird, but anyone else? Cool. Thank you.